How on earth does gorgeous swimsuit model Kate Upton debunk Karl Marx? Why, he's one of the most influential thinkers of the 19th century, and she gets paid for striking a pose. Quite easily, as a matter of fact. Stay tuned to find out how.
Whew, can't wait.
Hello everyone, this is My Two Cents. If you've ever had a discussion with a Marxist, or just a socialist of any stripe, it probably wasn't long before they started telling you about class theory. They tell us that capitalism is the story of the bourgeoisie who own the means of production, and the proletariat who provide labor to the bourgeoisie in exchange for a wage.
Actually, you're not that wrong here. More just buried the lead. In Marx's theory, the bourgeoisie own the means of production, and the proletariat work it for the benefit of the bourgeois. Long ago in America, we had slavery, which had no wages at all, under capitalism, by the way, until a war, not the market, ended it. But the classes were still the same. The bourgeois, who owned the plantations, and the proletarian slaves who worked them, for the sole benefit of the owner. Now, thanks to those pesky regulations you ANCAPs hate so much, that we got from the Civil War, you can't profit off of someone's labor for free. Unless they're an intern or a prisoner, of course. America.
It's that simple. Two classes, and the bourgeoisie are exploiting the proletariat by extracting surplus value from their labor, constantly striving to lower wages and ensuring that the wealth inequality gap grows exponentially. This leads to a few bourgeoisie who spend their days swimming in piles of gold, while everyone else groans in pain, hardly able to afford a crust of bread with their measly wages.
Yep, that's pretty much it actually, except for the part where you don't actually know what the means of production is and therefore where the exploitation comes from.
Now, before any of you Marxists accuse me of misrepresenting Karl Marx's view of class theory, listen to noted Marxist professor Richard Wolff explain it himself.
The way class works in our society can best be understood if you think about how a business works. In most businesses, the people who do the work come 5 days a week, use their brains and muscles doing what the employer sets them as tasks, with the equipment and materials the employer provides. At the end of the day, they go home, and the employer keeps the fruits of their labor, which the employer then sells. And the goal of the employer is to get more money when he sells the output than it cost him to buy the tools, equipment, raw material, and hire those workers. Class is this difference between those who do the work, the overwhelming majority, and those who gather the profit into their hands.
Different socialists have slightly different terms for this concept. Bernie Sanders is fond of talking about the 1% and the 99%. But no matter what progressive you're talking to, they have some kind of very simple narrative about haves and have-nots, oppressor and oppressed.
So why do you think that is, Sense? What is it that the haves have and the nots don't? It's not just money. It's the means of production, land, office space, machinery, that they coerce the proletariat into working for them, for a wage, because if they don't, they will eventually starve. The proletarians, obviously, not the capitalists.
And what's more important, they're convinced that everyone is born into whatever class they're in. You're either part of the oppressive capitalist class or an oppressed labor worker. And even if there are some rare exceptions, the vast majority of people will never be able to change what class they're a part of, no matter how hard they work. So where did Marx go wrong? As I alluded to at the beginning, we're going to find the answer by looking to the beautiful and awe-inspiring swimsuit model, Kate Upton. What does Kate Upton have to do with a discussion of class theory, you may ask? Well, I want you to consider this question. Based on Marx's explanation of the capitalist class and the labor class, which class does Kate belong to?
The proletariat. I'd explain why, but I don't think I could do a better job than you. Ladies and gentlemen, My 2 cents, defeating his own argument.
Kate doesn't own Guess or Sports Illustrated. She doesn't own the cameras or studios where she appears. Kate simply sells her labor in exchange for a wage, which according to Marx, would make her a member of the oppressed and exploited proletariat. Yet Kate has an estimated net worth of more than $10 million, which puts her in the top 1% of all Americans.
Ah, and herein lies the disconnect. In Marx's theory, net worth doesn't define class. Whether or not one owns the means of production does. And what did you say earlier?
Kate doesn't own Guess or Sports Illustrated. She doesn't own the cameras or studios where she appears. Kate simply sells her labor in exchange for a wage.
Almost all of the wealth and much of the income is going to the top 1%.
How can it be the case that Kate Upton is an oppressed labor worker, but simultaneously a member of the 1%?
Because since she doesn't own the means of production, the cameras, sets, magazine printers, etc., by modeling, she is doing labor for a wage, and definitionally by working or laboring as a model, yes, what she's doing is considered labor, whether you like it or not, using the means of production rather than owning said means of production. She is generating more wealth than she is being paid, however much or little that may be, with the surplus going to the owners and shareholders who are generally not involved in the laboring process. Do you really think the owners of Vogue are the ones taking the pictures of her, booking her shoot, editing her pictures? No, other members of the proletariat are, as you mentioned, selling their labor to Johnny Vogue at definitionally less than it is worth, so that Johnny V can get paid for doing absolutely nothing but having his fucking name on everything. Whew. What else you got?
Well, quite simply, the difference is supply and demand. According to models themselves, the vast majority of women in the modeling industry spend their days going to auditions, most of them being turned down and receiving no compensation. Those that are hired receive wages that are less than impressive, even if they secure the position on the cover of a magazine.
I don't know. Sounds pretty exploitative to me, bro.
The difference is that whether you believe she deserves it or not, Kate Upton has reached a level of notoriety where producers know that products with her body on the cover will sell.
He's about to get very off track here, so I'm just going to speed it up a little bit.
As such, they're all competing for Kate's labor, requiring them to offer increasingly higher amounts of money in order to get her to sign with them. Consider also persons in the professions of law, medicine, and the financial sector. Do lawyers, doctors, or financial advisors own any means of production? Typically, no. They provide labor in exchange for payment as well. However, because they've spent years developing specific skill sets that most of the population does not have, their labor is worth far more than the labor of burger flippers at McDonald's, again, as a result of supply and demand.
Do you guys understand the disconnect here? It doesn't matter how you're laboring or what you're being paid, whether it's $100 an hour or 10 cents a month, the owners of the means of production pay you less than you generate for them by working said means. Doctors to burger flippers, models to sweatshop workers, you make money by the work you do, and the bourgeois business owners make money by the work you do. So why do we need them? You have nothing to lose but your chains. He goes on a little bit about wages and things like that, which is not really relevant to the conversation because it's really about the means of production, so I decided to cut it out. Link to his original video in the description. Thank you for watching.
Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. When the union's inspiration through the workers' blood shall run, there can be no greater power anywhere beneath the sun. Yet what force on earth is weaker than the feeble strength of one? But the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever.